Hey, Chris.
Good morning.
Here we are again.
Anthony Franco. Man, I just feel like I haven't seen you in so long.
I know. It was a good decision for you to wake up this morning. Like how I helped you lead in. Like that. Like that. I'm starting to get good at this podcasting thing.
I wouldn't say good, Anthony.
Come on.
I would say we're good. We suck.
We don't suck. How about that? We don't suck. All right, maybe
suck.
Still a stretch. All
yes, right. We still suck, but just to what degree do we suck? Anthony, have you ever wondered why world-class poker players make better business decisions than most CEOs? I think that's probably true. In 1976, professional poker player Thomas Preston Jr., a.k.a. Amarillo Slim. I said Amarillo because we were talking about Spanish. Amarillo Slim, and I am from Texas. Sorry, all of our great. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for joining us. The Amarillo Slim, Texas. Anyway, challenged Minnesota Fats to a $50,000 game of pool, but with a twist. Instead of pool cues, they used broomsticks. Fats, considered the greatest pool player alive, confidently accepted. What he didn't know was that Preston had spent months secretly practicing with a broomstick, and Preston won handily, teaching a masterclass in calculated risk-taking and information asymmetry that modern founders would do well to study. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're talking about making good decisions. I'm Chris Franks, and with me is somebody who's made a lot of poor decisions, including choosing to do this podcast with me, Mr. Anthony Franco. And today, Anthony, we have Mike Handcock. This is, first of all, joining us from South Africa this afternoon for you, Mike. But Mike Handcock isn't your typical business guru. He's a category-defining Renaissance man who's built 5 companies across 20 countries. Have you been to 20 countries, Anthony? I don't know.
If Boulder counts, yes.
It 100% counts, right? Across 20 countries, while somehow finding time to drop a #1 iTunes hit and direct an award-winning film. As a globally recognized speaker and conscious leadership expert, Mike specializes in helping founders make better decisions by thinking differently. Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Are you questioning your decision to join us this morning, right now? Are you saying
it's awesome to be here with you guys?
Poor judge of character. Bad decision, Mike. Bad decision.
Decision making. You're already questioning your decision. So why is it that we as founders, why is it that we typically make terrible decisions? Even though we have information, we work hard to go out and do background research. We talk to people, yet oftentimes the decisions we make are still terrible. We decide to choose the wrong product, the wrong industry, the wrong category. Why do we do that, Mike?
Wow, there's a lot of answers to that one, definitely there, Chris. But I think fundamentally it comes down to 2 things. Number 1, we don't trust our gut. So we're going with this. We override our gut with this. And number 2 is that we chase money. We don't follow the strategy that we designed and researched, et cetera, We go, we should be following our strategy, but hang on, there's money over there, so I'm going to head in that direction. And every single time that happens, it turns into some type of disaster. So I think they're the 2 big ones. And I think if I had to put a third in there just to mix it up a little bit, we're too busy focused on doing the wrong things right, not doing the right things right.
You just described how my first 2 companies failed, Mike, right then and there. Just about, this is what I'm going to do. Wait a second. somebody showed me a $1 bill over here. I'm going to pivot my entire thing. Anthony, does that resonate with you? You ever done that?
Well, so I think it's a little bit. It also depends on the stage of your company. There's so many questions, Mike, that those three things just brought up in me. So I'm going to try to limit this to our allotted time of over a half an hour. and
say that questions of guests, Anthony. It's go right ahead.
I tell founders in the very early stages of your startup, you're probably going to be in the business of whatever somebody will write you a check for, and that's probably okay. But you still have to continue to chase your strategy. Now, as you continue to grow as a company, if you're constantly in the business of whatever somebody's going to write you a check for, you don't have a business. You're just a consultant at that point, which is still a good business, but it's not probably what you started out to do. So I think it just depends. But you're fundamentally right. Trust your gut. The question I have, Chris, is I want you to dig in this gut thing. Like, trust your gut. What if you have a bad gut? What if your intuition's horrible?
I ate some Mexican food last night, and my gut's not doing so great this morning. I don't know that I want to trust my gut right now. No, I hear you, Mike, which is, I think we can unpack each one of these. So let's start with that.
I don't know that anybody has a bad gut, Chris. I mean, I think inherently we were all born with really amazing psychic gifts, gut gifts, intuition, everything. It's just a matter of how much it's been beaten out of us by the system that we grew up in. So I think people that have, had a lot of school teachers that told them, use your head, not your heart, and, always ask how, right? All that sort of stuff. It's just, it takes a while to decode that. So I think that, everybody that I know that is really good in entrepreneurship, well, let me put it this way. All the billionaires I've ever worked with will always say their best decisions are intuitive. And in fact, I can remember one of them, Raymond Nason's his name. He's a South African billionaire, but he told me, he says, I'm getting old. My last decision took me 5 minutes to make. Normally they take me 10 seconds to make. I look at something, I go, I'm in or I'm out. That's a very enhanced gut feel. But I think for most people, we've had that. We've been told most of our lives not to follow our gut. So it's very hard to do that. But I think everybody's got good gut feel naturally. I think we're born with it.
Let me caveat that for a second, Chris, and just say, listening to your gut doesn't mean listening to what you want to do. And I think there's a difference.
Well, 100%. So I'll get Mike's reaction to that. What do you think? Do you agree, first of all? Because usually what most things Anthony says is wrong. So you feel free to disagree. At least I think most things he says is
wrong. No, I'd love to disagree just to be controversial, but I actually agree with him, right? I think
count me as one. I got one.
Dang it.
Yeah, sometimes people, it's like this. If you're focused on buying a blue Mercedes Benz, all you see everywhere is blue Mercedes Benz. So it's the same thing with shall I choose option A, B, or C? But you've been totally focusing on option C and go, no, option C, that's it. That to me is not trusting your gut. That inherently that you're doing the wrong thing. And these decisions can become really, really so simple. And that's why I think Raymond said they happen in seconds. And for me, it's sort of like, I get offered an opportunity and I just go, is this good or not? No, not feeling it. And then I go, I don't even know why I'm not feeling it. And then I can do everything to justify it, but I know I'm not feeling it. And we actually have something we teach our clients, which is a simple 6 steps to start to understand whether you should be taking an opportunity or not. I don't know if you want to dig into that or you want to move on.
Oh, yes. We love steps.
Okay.
We do love steps. Also, let me say, Mike, you're working with a couple of billionaires now. Anthony and I have billions of pennies. We have billions. Yeah.
Well, it's good. You guys, I love the way you bounce off each other, right? And that's the thing in business is that you need solid friends that are prepared to call you on your crap. And I think you guys do that for each other. I can see that already. Step number 1, does it fit your passion and purpose? I don't know why you do anything that doesn't. Step number 2, can you add value in your natural way? I used to be a corporate general manager. I can read a pivot table, but I never want to see one ever again in my life. So, but my natural way is speaking, being innovative, being creative. Step number 3, can you leverage it? So many people get into businesses where they hit a glass ceiling really quickly in them. Step number 4, if it fails, will it sink you? You know, we all heard of people who spent their last $50 on an idea and it turned into $1 million. But what we don't hear is everybody who spent their last $50 and is now living at their parents' house. So you don't need to do that. Opportunities of a lifetime comes around every day.
This actually is my parents' house, like right here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry. Step number 5 is, does it motivate you? In other words, if you had to keep getting up at 4 a.m. to do this, would you still be as excited about it after 3 months? And step number 6, is there a return from this that inspires you? And it may not be monetary. It may be that you feel you're doing really good for the planet. It may be that you're helping your local community. It may be that you're doing this to teach your kids how to be awesome. So they're the 6 steps. And I think if you run those, rewind and listen again, write them down and run them, you'll make less bad decisions.
I think that it's what you just described to me is something that I think is critically important for founders. And what Anthony and I typically say is understand your why. Why are you doing this thing? Trying 100%. To figure out what it is that's truly motivating you down this path. Because, Mike, in the world of being a founder, you will be pulled away from that constantly, more so than probably any other career. And I want to get to that next, these steps are really great, but almost always you start a business with a core purpose, a core idea, a core path. And for whatever reason, there's gravitational pull away from those things. There's temptations, chasing dollars, to your point. What is it about being a founder that's more inherent, I think, than any other career?
I think entrepreneur by its definition is manager and taker of risks. Okay. So I think when you look at the founder at its core being, it's a person who's not scared to take a risk. But I think what you guys are asking, and I love the question, you're asking is, which risks shall you take? And I think for us, every time we've seen people fail, it's for 2 fundamental reasons. Reason number 1 is they're not doing something that's from their heart. I'll give you an example so the listeners can understand it. Your dad was an engineer, so he told you had to be an engineer. So you did engineering. Now you started your own engineering firm, but it fails. That's because your heart's not in it. You actually wanted to own a nursery, right? Or run a cafe. Number 2 is that their business is too complex. There's too many components. I studied businesses that went into bankruptcy a few years ago, and every single one of them, and I'm not talking, banks or anything. I'm talking businesses that are doing 1 to 5 million sort of stuff. Every single one of them had too many components to them. They're too complex.
Interesting. Anthony, the one thing I want to just bring up here, and this is the piece where I think that the role of fear and the role of anxiety and the fear, like the imposter syndrome stuff, all that comes into play as I go down this path, which is when I start a company, I believe that I'm going to go and I believe I'm going to execute. And of course you go run against that first wall of failure. And when you hit that first wall of failure, that's when you start to doubt yourself. And that's when fear comes in. And this idea that's when almost always something dangles in your peripheral vision of somebody going, well, if you just would do this other thing, then, what pay you? And then that's when you start to really deviate across courses. Has that ever happened to you, Anthony? It certainly has happened to me.
So I don't suffer from a fear of failure. I probably should have it more than I do.
Actually, I mean, it's a good point because your early companies were pretty successful. I mean,
it's not that you shouldn't have some fear of failure. Like that fear of failure, I should restate that. That fear of failure kind of drives you to make sure that you don't fail. Like it gives you maybe peripheral vision that you normally wouldn't have. But I've never allowed that fear of failure to prevent me from moving forward. And I think Mike's 6 criteria for making a good decision actually dovetails really well in this. These 6 criteria only work for those that are not afraid to move towards fear. They only work for people that have a bias towards action. Otherwise, you'll use these 6 as a reason not to move at all. You'll find reasons not to continue to move forward. So I think these are great for those that have a predisposition to do rather than think. And so that's kind of who I am. To get back to your question, Chris, I have a propensity to move forward, and sometimes I move too quickly. But these are really good criteria for should I move in that direction.
Well, Mike, I guess I'm just the person here who screws up. Anthony's perfect. He's fine.
I didn't say that.
No, it's whatever, Anthony's fine. All right. I'll say
Greg.
it this way, Mike, which is I think when I started to deviate from those core paths, first of all, my first company was something I wasn't passionate about doing. I just was so desperate to get out of my corporate job. I was so desperate to go out and try to do my own thing in the world that I started a company that fundamentally doing something I didn't like to do, which was a huge mistake. But as I was going through that, I started to fail. And failure was that thing that made me deviate from those core purposes. And I didn't have that foundation. Is that something that you see often? It sounds like based on your 6 steps, like that is a true thing. If you don't have a strong foundation as a founder, you will find yourself kind of deviating.
Well, foundation, it's the same word. I think, and foundation to me is you've got to have solid people around you. And, a lot of people take advice from their parents who, that's great, but maybe their parents never had a business. They take advice from their college professor, but their college professor never had a business. You've got to surround yourself with the right people, and you've got to surround yourself with people that are going places. I'm a musician, but I always learn the best when I'm the worst musician in the room. I never learn the best when I'm the best musician in the room. So you've got to surround yourself with people who are doing better than you. If your company's turning over 100,000, you've got to surround yourself with $1 million business people. If your company's turning over $1 million, it's got to be 10 million. That's the way to do it. I think, listening to your story, Chris, I think you didn't have anybody around you. There was nobody to guide you. You're all on your own. So you just did the best that you could, right? And, I don't see you as a chicken farmer, but if your chicken farm's failed, well, you're probably heading into a better business now, right?
My chicken farm would have been a way better business than I started initially.
Chris has definitely laid some eggs.
Chickens. Yeah. At least I do like eggs. Okay, so I'm going to throw this stat at you, and then I'm going to ask you to react to it, which is 47% of business failure can be attributed to poor strategic decisions made in the first 18 months. And that comes from a Harvard Business Review study from 2023. And so if you know this foundation, is what you just said, Mike, these core principles, as you start to go through this, as you're starting to build a business, how do I approach these decisions? And I know say trust your gut and don't do this, but give me examples, give me tactics that I can use as a founder to say, should I pivot? Should I persevere? Should I go after this customer? Should I change my product? Should I turn it into a service? How would you give me advice to start to approach those?
Number one is I'm not a big fan of perseverance, right? So I think perseverance is somewhat overrated. It has its place. So I think I'm the type of person that if I launch something and it's not working within the first week, I'm going, this ain't going to work, right? I'm not going to pour money after it. I'd rather pivot and try and find something that does work. Number two is I think most founders spend all of their time trying to sell their stuff and very little of their time researching if the market wants their stuff. So I think if you turn that on the head, and before you go launching your next product or when you're focused on a problem in your business, go and research what's going on in the marketplace. And often, and particularly in downtimes like during COVID and things like this was a real problem for people, is people go, oh, my product's not going well, my business is not going well, I need to add more value. So I find that to be rarely the case. In fact, I find it probably if you strip value off it, you're going to have a better result. Meaning by adding more value, you overcomplicate things for your client and they don't understand. A lot of the reason clients don't buy from us is because they don't actually understand what we're selling because we've overcomplicated it. So the more you can keep things simple, I think the better it is. So I think I've answered your question, but I would be pivoting quickly if something's not working. I would be doing my research and I would be trying to simplify what I've got into fundamentally what people really want.
I think the piece of that, which is it's something where it's easier to say now. If I were giving advice to my younger self, I think it would be the advice I would give, which is founders can make a lot of different companies work. Like you can make a services company work, you can make a product company work, but be very conscious about the company that you want to build. And so, Anthony, I think that North Star, and we've talked about it a few times on the podcast, which is what does the company want to be? And you thinking of the company as almost this other entity about
Absolutely.
where it wants to go in life, where it wants to go in the market, et cetera. First of all, Anthony, just a reaction to that. Is that something that resonates with you? And if so, do you give that same advice, which is, hey, be very, very clear about the company you want to build? Because if you're not, you'll end up building, a services company or something that eats your lunch and makes you lose hair like I did.
Yeah, I find in the businesses that I start, I just want to build cool stuff. That's fundamentally what I want to be a part of. And the talent comes into deciding the cool part, right? It's like, I don't want to just build stuff. I want to build cool stuff, and cool stuff gets into that passion. Like, do I think it's cool? And then the next piece is, can I convince other people that it's cool? And then can I convince other people to open their wallet to buy it, right? So to kind of tag team onto what Mike was saying. But it fundamentally has to come down to, do I believe? Do I have passion? Does progress motivate me to make more progress? All of those things matter deeply when deciding what business to go into. And if you fundamentally get down to the thing that you like doing what you're doing, then you're going to continue to do it. If you're doing something, if you paint yourself into a corner in a business, Mike, I would really love to. So I've done this before, where I started a business that I thought I would fall in love with, and it got successful enough to keep me in it, but not successful enough. It should. If it failed sooner, I would have been happier, right?
Exactly.
Because it was just enough to keep me interested and motivated. Because I saw, okay, I can have a good exit on it. But anyway, wondering if you have a thought on that. Like, just how do you keep yourself from painting yourself into a corner?
Well, firstly, I think 50% of your listeners are going to be in that position, exactly that position. In fact, I think there's going to be a bunch of them. They're hugely successful, driving their Ferraris and got their beach house that feel exactly the same.
I'm pretty sure that nobody listening to this podcast has a Ferrari. I'm just going to throw it at that's a different podcast, I think. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, continue, Mike.
Oh, Chris, I think that, plenty of them are going to be going out after your podcast and buying their Ferrari.
Well, exactly right.
I appreciate that.
We're your path to a Ferrari.
Last night, we realized that when we talked to somebody yesterday that if we only have 6 people and all 6 people are oil titans, the oil sheiks, then we're good. So we're just waiting for the oil sheiks to come forward and say that they've been listening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe just a couple of episodes for oil sheiks only, and then you'll pull them in, right? But
we're going to pivot our podcast, Mike. That's it, for oil sheiks only.
Yeah, you have a vetting procedure as to who can listen to it. I think that makes sense. But I really think that for anybody listening to this, if you're finding yourself in that position, you've got to be prepared to say, I need to prepare this business for sale so that I can cash out, buy myself the 1, 2, or 3 years worth of my income out of this, to sit there and build what I really want, because life is short, right? And that's what I mean by perseverance is overrated. A couple of years ago, we looked at putting a new company on our group, which was essentially a digital marketing company. We didn't want to run it, but we've got clients all over the world, because of what we do. They're natural clients for a digital marketing company. I won't bore you with the interview process that we went through, but we eventually chose 2 people to come in and run this for us and get it off the ground and everything like this. After probably 3 months, it wasn't happening. And instead of persevering, we just went, we're not going to go into the digital marketing business. Next. See, I think the best 4-letter word in entrepreneurship is next, right? Even if something's working to an extent, but if your heart's not in it, it's going to self-destruct at some point. And when it goes down, it's probably going to go down big, unless you're lucky enough that somebody walks in with a check and says, oh, I really want that. So I just think prepare to sell and get rid of it and focus on what you want to do.
As we think about this, and what you bring up is such an incredibly powerful point, Mike, because as we think about, we're talking today about strategic decision making. So how do we make great decisions? I love that you created a framework for us to think about what businesses we should go into. I'm interpreting this, if it's not a absolutely yes, this is a great decision for me, then the answer should be no, you should move on. But really what you just said is incredibly valuable in the sense that we as entrepreneurs and founders, we tend to devalue our time. And so the time that we spend really is the most valuable asset that we have as founders, but yet it's the thing that we tend to just sort of ignore and push aside, et cetera. And so as a founder, how would you give me advice about thinking about what you just said? Hey, I've got a zombie company here. It's going, it's alive, it's not dead, it's kind of going, et cetera. But I'm spending a lot of my time and passion and energy trying to keep this thing going. What framework would you suggest for me to value my time, to make a decision whether I should continue or whether I should go on to the next thing?
Well, I think you ask yourself one question. And that one question is, if I had the opportunity to do this all over again, what would I do differently? And if you can think of a power of things that you would do differently, then you've got to ask yourself, can I actually do that in this business and be satisfied? And if the answer is no, then you need to make plans to exit. You need to prepare your business for exit. So I think too many people sit there and go, yes, darling, I'm going to be working Saturday afternoon and I've got to get on my laptop on Sunday morning. But remember, this is what pays the kids to go to school. Yet in the meantime, you're destroying your family. You're teaching your kids bad habits that they've got to work 100 hours a week to get anywhere. You're estranged from your spouse, and you're probably not contributing in any real positive way to the world. And when you get to the end of your life, you're going to have regrets. I don't want that. I would rather say, this ain't working. I shouldn't be working these hours. I don't care if it pays for the kids to go to school or not. I need to find a better way, something that resonates with me. And that doesn't mean that I walk out of my business. That means that I do the work to position my business for sale or have some manager come in or do something else so that I can free up my time to think. Because I was smart enough to get this business and make something I don't even like work. So imagine what I could do if I found something I liked and how I could make that work.
So, Brian, thank you for the topic. I'm going to include yours in our deep dive here in just a couple of seconds as we talk about how to get deeper in the conversation. I want to ask one more question really before we go into the speed round, Mike, which is, it's all good to say, I really want to understand, or Anthony will just put it up right now. That's fine. Thanks, Anthony.
There you go.
It's all good to say, hey, we want to figure out this thing that you're passionate about, that you enjoy and that you're aligned with, and you're going to go do this thing and it's going to make you happy and it's going to be driven because we know it's going to be hard, but because I'm doing this one thing, I'm going to be really aligned and focused. How do we find that thing, Mike? That's a really different question. Finding that purpose, finding your why, finding what it is that you want to go out and do in the world. one of the things that we're fond of saying in my house is that getting what you want is easy. Knowing what you want is hard. So how would you think about even earlier?
Well, I think firstly, the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your questions. And when somebody's struggling with this, I always have two questions that I ask them. Number one is, if you only had one more year to live and you had to make an income at least at the level that you're making now, but you could do anything with your 9 to 5 time.
Income? I'm not familiar with that word.
Okay. Income, salary, you make the same amount of money.
I still don't. Money?
Wages, pennies in the pound.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So if you had that year and you could do anything that you want to recreate that income, what would you invest that last year of your life in doing? That would be question number one. Question number two would be, if I went to the 5 people who knew you the best and asked them, what is it that you do that's better than almost anybody else that they've met, what would they tell me? Now, if you can't answer that question, you probably should go and ask them so that you've got the feedback. And it's really interesting when people do. And I can remember one person, just to give you a side, years and years ago, it was 2010, I used those questions on them. And they came back to me after some research and they said, the thing I'm most passionate about in the world is speaking. But the thing that I'm told that I'm best at in the world is listening. How the hell do I make a business out of that? Right? And I said, well, it's easy. You become a speaker who teaches corporations on how to listen better, how to listen to their staff, how to listen to their stakeholders, how to listen to their clients better. That person's an extremely successful person these days and has a great business. So you can do it, but it comes down to the questions you ask yourself.
It's a terrific point. We know that Anthony's core purpose is just to, give me crap, because that's what he's best at the world at.
I'm pretty good at it.
Super passionate about it as well, which, is good. You're
of course, I have, you do such a tremendous job at giving me a lot of material to work with.
I'm glad I can help you along your path. Glad I can do that. I think it's a really profound point, Mike. And I think that it really does get to the core of being an early stage founder, which is, and Anthony, I think you would agree with this, is that almost nobody that gets into this business just because they think they can make a lot of money, almost none of them are successful.
Exactly.
It's really hard. It's tough. And if you want to make a lot of money, it's way easier just to go get a good job, right? You'll work less, you'll be less stressed, all that sort of stuff. But it is, you see it, Anthony, where people do come in and be like, oh, I'm just going to hit this market. I'm going to start the next social network. It's going to be bigger than all the meta stuff. And it's going to be great. And you're like, why? That's the things.
Well, it's funny. Why money is you exchange money for time, right? You exchange money for something. You're pursuing the thing that you want to trade for the thing that you want. Why not just pursue the thing that you want?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's Mike, it really gets down, and this is getting deeply philosophical, but the idea of wealth, which is most wealthy people, like, genuinely have a lot of money, would explain to you that they're buying their time, right? That money will buy them time. And the reality is there's other ways to buy time to do things you love. I mean, is that a fair statement, Mike?
Yeah, and it is, Chris. And I also find that super wealthy people are very precious with their time, whereas poor people are very free with their time. So, for instance, I can walk out on the street here in South Africa and flip anybody $10 and they'll probably come and wash my car. For most successful people, if I offered them $1,000, they'd tell me to go take a hike, right? Because their time is super valuable. So the minute we start putting our time ahead of our money, our fundamental mindset changes, because it's about what we choose to focus on with our time. And I was talking to a founder not long ago in the last hour. He runs a branding company, and I said to him, why are you doing any of the work? Why haven't you got people doing the work and you just do the strategy? Because that's what you love. Why are you fiddling around with people's websites and their funnels and all of that sort of stuff? Just get people to do that. But we as business people think, oh, well, we've got to give away half our money or something like that. I look at it like this. If I can get somebody else to do everything for me, I've got all my time back. What can I create with that? So that would be my answer.
I appreciate that. I'm just writing down to send Anthony a bill for $60 million for all the time that I've spent with him. But anyway, I want to get just tactical for a second, and then we'll go into the speed round, Mike, which is tactically. So how should I do this as a founder? And I get it. I understand you're saying, start with these big questions, make sure you're aligned, use your 6 questions as part of the framework. But in that moment, no plan survives contact with the enemy. You're going to be constant. You're going to be pulled away from that. Do you recommend writing them down, putting them up the wall, revisiting them, putting a calendar, a task on your calendar to show back up? Like what do you recommend for us as founders to really make sure that we maintain that alignment going forward, even in the face of companies and businesses that when you start to kind of get more chaotic?
I'm going to give you 2 answers, Chris. Firstly is on a macro level, is that, I gave you the list of 6 things. If something that's coming across your desk doesn't tick 6 out of 6, then don't do it. I know a guy called Dolph DeRuse, who's Robert Kiyosaki's property guy, was for many years. And he told me the opportunity of a lifetime comes around every day. And I found that to be pretty true. Maybe not every day, but certainly quite regularly. And I think secondly, on a practical basis, in 2015, Lundy, my wife, and I were in 40 countries that year, 40. And I worked out how many hours we'd spend on a plane. It was 6 working weeks sitting on a plane. And I said, look, how are we going to run our businesses and do this? And so what I did is, very practical, I went and got an app. I'm not an affiliate for it. I went and got an app called Rescue Time, and I put it on my computer so I could see what I was doing with my time. Back in 2015, here's a guy who runs 5 companies, as apparently this like super duper guy, et cetera. I'm spending 46% of the time on my computer every day, which was I was averaging around 4 hours a day. So half of that, 2 hours a day, I'm in design. I'm designing stuff. Like, I didn't even know this. So in a very practical viewpoint, we just went out straight away immediately and hired a designer, and I got all my time back.
Anthony just cringed because that's what he wants to do. He loves.
But I love designing. Yeah,
I love that design behind you. It's sort of like the Beatles,
right? Zach asked a quick question before we go into the speed round, Chris. What are your strategies for battling your shiny object syndrome? I think it's a great question.
Which it is a great question. And I want to just add on to one of those things, which is there is a lot of us that are ADHD. And like in the classic sense where we love those other things and we get super excited about them. And the reality is that oftentimes we should just focus on executing our business.
Well, my answer to that question would take a little bit of time. So I'm going to give you a quick snapshot at it. Firstly, the 6 things are going to stop a lot of those bright, shiny objects because they just won't tick a 6 out of 6. And with the other ones that do tick a 6 out of 6, we don't work on Fridays. So on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we only do 2 things. We either get, which means we sell, or we groom, which means we build relationships, i.e. doing this, right? Yet on a Friday, we play with our shiny objects.
So give yourself space to play.
I'll add one thing to that, Zach. Usually, the thing that kind of tweaked my thinking on this is saying yes to the shiny objects means just saying no to something else, 100%. And just make sure that you're saying no to the right thing. Yep. And to use Mike's framework, one of the 6. If you're saying yes to something that has 5 of the 6, and you're saying no to something that has 6 of the 6. Do the 6 of the 6.
Exactly.
I like it. All right. Mike, are you ready for this speed round?
Oh, I don't have the sound effect. I forgot the sound effect. Sorry, Chris.
You built this a sound effect. I like
it. Sure. Yes.
Would you, since Mike is music, give us just kind of, is it like dun dun dun? Like tell me,
what should we be doing?
Just do your sound effect with your voice, Anthony.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, that's it. You did it.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That was good.
That's pretty good.
Very
Mike,
musical.
also, as we go into the speed round, what was your number 1 iTunes hit?
After years of trying to write serious songs to become number one, my friend and I wrote a spoof song about the mayor in Auckland, New Zealand, who slept with his Chinese secretary to the tune of the Beverly Hillbillies theme. And it was called Pants Down Brown. And the chorus went, pants down brown, our rates are going up while he's going down. And it went to number one in New Zealand on iTunes.
That is
so careful
amazing.
What you wish for. Sometimes you get it.
You are the Weird Al Yankovic of New Zealand. That's incredible. All right. So as I'm making decisions, should I focus more on gut or data? People say data, but I think you're going to say gut. What do you think?
Gut.
Okay. Single founder decisions or leadership team consensus? As you're going, do I get everybody on the same page, or do I just make the decision and move on?
Ask everybody their opinion, then you make the decision.
Quick decisions now, or should I punt to get more information to make a better decision later?
Depends on the decision, but I would say make the decision now and then get the information to support your decision. That's how Richard Branson launched Virgin.
Should I focus more on getting internal advice, or should I focus more on getting external advice? Listen more to my team, or listen more to other people outside?
Both.
Both. And last question, who's more handsome, Anthony or I?
I have to say your avatars exceed my expectation.
Oh, wow. That's I'm going to take that as a win.
It's funny. That's exactly what my wife told me when she met me.
And actually, Chris, I'm going to say you because you look exactly like a friend of mine, and he's a really good buddy of mine. He looks exactly like you. So I'll have to go with you. Sorry, Anthony.
Yeah, no, and we have good haircuts, which is you and I. So bald people have to stick together. All right, Anthony, what did you learn today? Tell us what you've taken away from the exercise.
So there's a lot here. I'll try to go through it quick. First thing, trust your gut. Best decisions are always intuitive. Focus on doing the right things right, not the wrong things right. I'm going to go through Mike's 6 criteria for making good decisions. With the caveat, this is for people that have a predisposition for action. Does it fit your passion, purpose? Can you add value in it in your natural way? Can you leverage it? If it fails, will it sink you? Does it motivate you? Is there a return that inspires you? And the last is the reasons why people fail. Your heart is not in it, or your business is too complex. Those were actually a lot of great bullet points for us, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I thought that was great as well. So deep dive in this, Brian. So we already said this is a book, which is Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. Thank you, Brian, for that one. A few other ones. The Psychology of Money. Morgan Housel was actually a really terrific book that I appreciated because it was one of those things that kind of reframed this big factor on that one as well. Think Again by Adam Grant is a terrific one. And The Science of Strategic Decision Making by Harvard Business Review is a pretty terrific one. Mike, where can we find more information about you? Where can we connect? Where can we get more great information on this stuff?
2 ways. You can follow me on LinkedIn or befriend me, Mike Handcock with a D. Just have a look at what's on screen. And number 2 is go to our website, circleofexcellence.biz, B-I-Z. And right on the front page there's a really good survey you can fill out, which will tell you where you're going wrong in your business right now. Guys, I want to thank you for your time. That was awesome. You're a lot of fun.
We appreciate it. I still don't know what Z is, though. That's just, Z.
Chris, I'm gonna take it from you. I'll wrap things up for us.
Anthony, what do we have coming up?
Coming up, we have how to reality check your idea. So we're looking forward to that on Thursday. I want to tell everybody thank you so much for tuning in. And Mike, really appreciate it. It was a great, I learned a lot. I took a whole bunch of notes. We had a lot of great interaction online too. So I'm trying to respond to all of the the comments and requests for information. So I'll do more of that after the podcast show. For those of you that are looking to support the show, go to howtofounder.com and you can subscribe to us on YouTube, or for Chris's heart, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're looking for more reviews on Apple Podcasts, so please do that.
Unless it's bad, in which case just put it on Anthony's LinkedIn page.
I just assume, Chris, that everybody loves our. If they look, let me say it this way: if they've made it this far, they're probably going to get a good review.
That's a good point. Other than the fact of like, hey, listen, they're not as boring as they usually are, and I didn't get to see. That would not be a bad review. Like, just put a 5-star review and say they're not as boring as they usually are. Well, I'll take it. All right. With that, thank you very much, Mike. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.